Can Donald Trump retain the House and Senate as well as the governorships in 2026? The first generic ballot from Cygnal shows that the Republicans are ahead nationwide by 4 percentage points, which would be about a 3-point increase from Donald Trump's popular vote victory this year. Looking at the Senate map, we have a lot of seats that are up for grabs. We can see as of right now, the state of Oregon is about a 12.5-point win in this hypothetical matchup from my model. This puts it in the safe Democrat column. If we were to look at the result from the previous cycle, we would actually see that according to the previous election, we saw that the seat was a 17.5-point seat back in 2020 for Merkley. We see now it is only a 12.5-point win, but is still above 10 points. It goes in the safe column. Alaska, about a 13-point win for Sullivan. As of right now, it is a 20-point win in this hypothetical model, so we will be putting that in the safe Republican column. Idaho will be in the safe Republican column, 29 points. Montana, we saw here, this is very interesting. The last result was a Daines plus 10 result. As you could see back in 2014, the seat has actually gotten kind of weird. It has technically gone a little bit closer. It used to be a Democrat stronghold, and then all of a sudden managed to flip in 2014, and now in 2020, Daines was actually a little bit more closer to losing than last time, but it is still a 12-point win, so he overperforms from his last bid. In the Senate, Wyoming will be safe. South Dakota, Nebraska, you can see all of these margins are pretty much well in the safe column, as well as Kansas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana. A lot of these states are going to be in the safe Republican column, including Kentucky, Tennessee, Mississippi, Alabama, West Virginia. All of these seats are essentially in the safe column. Mississippi is a 13-point win. As of right now, we saw that a 10-point victory was up for that Senate seat back in 2020. Hyde-Smith is a underperformer, and local Mississippi politics tend to be less partisan than the presidential election, so that's something very interesting to keep in mind. We also see Ernst only won by 6.5 points. This is a senator that's been kind of giving a lot of the Trump administration a cabinet confirmation some trouble. We also have Cornyn, who's also been giving some trouble in the Senate as well for the president-elect. Florida and Ohio actually have special election seats up for grabs due to, I think it's JD and then Marco Rubio. They're up for grabs. So we see here Ohio and Florida, they're going to be in the safe column. Ohio, 10.1 percentage point win. Florida, 17.7. It seems like Joni Ernst, based on the modeling, would win re-election quite easily compared to 2020. But it really depends on the polling and the environment we get in the future. We also see in the state of Texas, however, it is only an 8-point win for Cornyn as the incumbent senator. He actually underperforms the last election, despite the state of Texas going very, very heavily in the Republican column in 2024. South Carolina, Graham, I believe he does hold on by a little bit over 10 points. He holds on by 14.6% in this hypothetical matchup, and Republicans have already won back the Senate in this map. So it's going to be incredibly difficult for Democrats to pick up the Senate in 2026. Illinois, an 18-point win. You see 10-point victory here for Senator Warren. We see that, New Jersey, Delaware, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, New Hampshire is a pretty big win as of right now. So we kind of see those filled in as well. In the map here, Colorado, an 8.3 percentage point win. This is an interesting seat because the Democrat here tends to underperform quite a bit, and as well as in New Mexico too. Both of these senators tend to underperform quite a bit, and we see Hickenlooper. We see only an 8-point win in an R+4 national environment. I think here the environment was roughly like D+, roughly. You see it here, it's about R+2. According to this right here, you could see it's R+2.3. as a result. So that's kind of what you're looking at in the popular vote in the Senate. But this was like a D+1, a nationwide popular vote. So again, very, very interesting to see this unfold. But right now, there really isn't a lot of competitive seats. Even Minnesota in this one is about 4.3 against Smith. Also tends to underperform in his Senate seat, but we see here that it is about a 4.3 percentage point win. So Smith does win re-election, however, very, very slightly. We see in the state of New Mexico, however, a 0.7 percentage point win for the incumbent senator as of right now. This senator tends to massively underperform his seat, and the seat actually has been moving massively, massively to the right. You saw Udall won by about 23 points back in 2008. 2014, it was only an 11-point win. Now 2020, only 6 points. So this seat is moving more and more to the right as time goes on. In an environment where it is about a 4-point win, and according to the poll, minority voters are actually driving this 4-point lead the most out of any demographic alongside white voters. It wouldn't surprise me to see the state of New Mexico Senate seat become relatively competitive. Looking at other states, New Hampshire is going to be in the safe column. That senator tends to overperform a lot, and so they're winning by about 13. But we see here in the state of Maine, the first flip for the Democrats today. We see Susan Collins would go down in a hypothetical matchup. But again, this is without any polling. If we were to poll the race and like she was leading by 6 points, you would see it's effectively like a toss-up seat at this point in time, especially here. And I mean, her performance in the state has actually gotten worse and worse as time has gone on. Believe it or not, if we actually look at 2014, she won the seat by 37 percentage points. 2008, she won by 22. So she did gain from 2006 to 2014, but then you see that she actually drops in 2020. So she's become less and less popular as time has gone on. And with her not being very Trumpy, with Trump not on the ballot, which did actually save her in that election, people tend to forget that Trump being on the ballot actually really saved her from losing the election. And so that is essentially what's going on. That is the first flip of the night, according to the model, a 2.5-point win for the Democrat challenger in the state of Maine. Now we're looking at Michigan, North Carolina, and Georgia, which I believe are the most competitive seats in the whole map. For whatever reason, my model has the Michigan seat moving super Republican. So it is likely, but that could change with polling. But I can tell you right now that Peters, that seat is definitely in big, big trouble. We saw here in 2008, the seat was a 28-point win for Levine. Then in 2014, it dropped to just 13. And now in 2020, the seat is just a 1.7 percentage point win. So you can see it's been zooming to the right every single election cycle. And so now, with the way the seat is and the way it's trending and the fact that it's a pretty favorable national environment, you're getting a pretty Republican seat out of that Senate seat in the state of Michigan. If polling comes in and kind of has the Democrat ahead a lot, it'll probably be a toss-up, but as of right now, it is in the likely Republican column. We will now see in North Carolina a 6.6 percentage point win for the Republican. I mean, the state has been gaining in Republican registration. And yes, Tillis is not exactly your most popular senator, but I would highly recommend to not drop him from the ticket. If we were to go over here and actually plug in the victory or the loss margin for Mark Robinson, you'd see the Senate seat would be ultra competitive, and more than likely the demographics and the nationwide environment would kind of shift if Mark Robinson was included, because it'd affect the national popular vote in the polling for Senate as well. So very, very interesting to see that unfold in North Carolina. The closest Senate seat that the Republicans actually now flip is actually in the state of Georgia, where Republicans actually end up getting the seat in Georgia. They flip it from Ossoff according to this election model. Now, the seat has been moving to the left. That's why they're barely picking it off in an R+4 a nationwide environment. So essentially what ends up happening is Maine goes Democrat, Michigan and Georgia end up flipping into the Republican column, and that's why Republicans net a Senate seat as of right now. And with New Mexico being ultra competitive, that seat, if that Democrat senator, that seat is just not going the right way, you're going to possibly see that one flip too. I don't really think Minnesota is going to flip Republican in a red wave year like that. Maine at large, it's going to be hard for Susan Collins to like really hold on. But that's kind of where I'm at with the Senate, according to the poll. For the governorship races, we see the state of California, just a 15.5-point win. So Gavin would underperform again, or whoever the Democrat nominee is would underperform Gavin's margin. We see here Idaho, Wyoming, South Dakota, Nebraska, Oklahoma. All of these states are kind of in the safe Republican column as of right now, even including, Arkansas, Tennessee, the state of Alabama. Even Alaska is kind of in that column big time. So we see those kind of really take shape. You see in the state of Iowa, a pretty massive win. Oh, actually, I was looking at the wrong one, but it does show it being an 18-point win. I don't know why I was looking at the wrong map. But we see here Ohio in the governorship, a 22-point win. Mike DeWine is a pretty strong gubernatorial candidate. We also see in South Carolina a 20.5-point win for McMaster in the state of South Carolina. Illinois, just a 13-point win for Pritzker, assuming he would run for re-election. Again, all of these margins could change as the polling progresses. Texas, a 14-point win in the state, putting that in the safe column. That would be an improvement from the last cycle. We'd actually see that in 2022, saw Abbott won the state by 10.9%. So that'd be about a 3-point improvement. Florida, a 20.5-point win. So that'd actually be an improvement from DeSantis' victory from the last election of 19.4, a slight overperformance in the state of Florida for the gubernatorial candidate. Again, polling can definitely change this result as of right now. No polling with the individual candidates has actually been incorporated into the model as of right now. This is just looking at the poll that was released and kind of testing that national environment with my model that I have for the gubernatorial elections. We see here Vermont is going to be safe. I mean, that seat is basically in the safe column. It's not going to be as red as it was in 2022. Phil Scott's a very liberal Republican, and his approval ratings kind of dipped. So, he'd still hold on quite easily. I mean, he'd hold on by about 30.7. You saw in New Hampshire, the Republican candidate more than likely would hold on by over 10 points. Gubernatorial elections are very weird. They're not as partisan as Senate or presidential elections are, so they are kind of wonky. Massachusetts and Maryland, these are both safe Democrat wins, as well as Connecticut, Rhode Island as of right now. So we will be putting all of these in the safe Democrat column, and the state of Hawaii would also be in that plus 22-point Democrat column. And we now have all of these somewhat competitive seats. So we see that Nevada, a 6.1 percentage point win. I mean, Joe Lombardo won the race by 1.5, but it seems that, Nevada tends to love their re-elected Republican governors, and the model has the seat trending to the right. And with it being a pretty favorable Republican environment with the R+4 national poll, we now see that the state of Nevada is well into the Republican territory as of right now. Colorado will be in that safe column. Polis would underperform by about 4 points, but he still wins by over 15. We see in the New Mexico Senate seat, that one, or the governor's seat, that one's a lot closer because that candidate also really tends to underperform. Ron Chetty is also a very popular Republican candidate in the state of New Mexico, so that's another thing as well. And you can even see, look how much that's shifted to the left as time has gone on. Very, very fascinating. It was shifted massively to the right over the past couple of years. And now Kansas would be in the likely Republican column at this point, unless the polling changes, which it very well could. You saw Kelly was able to barely hold on to re-election in 2022 by 2 points, but I believe she is actually term limited. And so that may possibly give the Democrats a problem in Kansas. Now, it is going to be somewhat closer compared to Donald Trump's win of 19 or 16 points in the state of Kansas, but I do think it'll be a Republican flip this time around. We will now look at some other states. For example, we're going to be looking at some of the other competitive states. Minnesota is very interesting because it's actually not even the likely column. Pennsylvania, a 5-point win for the Democrat in that governor's race. Mike Duggan, who is the mayor of Detroit, is actually really giving them a run for their money big time, because apparently he is a very popular third-party candidate according to Red Eagle Politics, and there is no polling yet, but he suspects that he'd get about 30 to 35% of the vote. And so if the polling becomes kind of weird where the Republican is leading by like 10 points in the gubernatorial election, you may see that race become way closer than the massive victory that Whitmer had back in 2022. So that's something to look for. Pennsylvania is also another one, 6.8% for Shapiro. Depends again on the polling. If he's polling ahead by really, really massive margins, then you're probably going to see more than likely you would see him, do well, because if he's polling ahead by like 16 points, he'll probably win the seat by about 9, give or take. But he's definitely going to underperform from his 2022 performance in the state of Pennsylvania, given the, controversial case with the farmers. That's definitely going to be a big problem for him. We see in the state of New York, 5.8% for Hochul to be reelected as of right now. This seat could actually become competitive. Like if the gubernatorial candidate is like the Republican is actually leading the polling by like a couple points, like that seat could actually get within single digits. So that's going to definitely be something really interesting to look for heading into the next general election. So that'll be in the likely column. We see Maine would actually drop to being in the likely Democrat column. Georgia, a 10.5-point win. This actually puts the state in a safe Republican column. We see that more than likely the Republican candidate would win quite easily and would overperform Kemp's margin in the state. But again, polling would make a huge difference in that race. We see Minnesota, just a 4.5-point win in the state. So Walz would underperform quite extensively by about 3 points from his last bid, and this would be one of the worst performances of a governor for re-election in a state. More than likely, I think he may be term limited, actually. I don't know how it works in Minnesota, but that race definitely might get close. And we see another flip. We see the Republican governorship in Arizona, or the Democrat one flips to Republican by about 2 points. The New Mexico one kind of holds. And then we have the two most competitive ones. Oregon would be tilt Democrat. This seat's been weird because there's been a lot of third-party antics in this race for quite a while. A lot of third-party candidates tend to throw their hat in the ring, and for whatever reason, Republicans at the down ballot level tend to be a lot more popular. So that's definitely something that could be very interesting. You saw here only a 1.5-point win. And this was a Republican environment of R+1 on the ballot. So really interesting to kind of see that actually take place. But yeah, guys, this is what's going on. That seat in 2022 was only a 3-point win. That seat could actually flip and become somewhat competitive depending on what happens. Right now in an R+4 environment, it does show the seat extremely competitive. And in Wisconsin, we have a flip. It actually shows Evers losing re-election by 3 points. But again, if he's polling anything ahead at all, like if he's even polling ahead by like a point in the state, he actually wins re-election. So if he's polling ahead by like 6 points, he's probably going to win by about 6 or he'll probably win by about like 1 or 2. So it really depends on the polling as well. But right now, we have 3 flips in the governorship. Wisconsin, Kansas, and Arizona would be the 3 flips you would see on election night, as well as Michigan and Georgia flipping Republican, with Maine flipping back to the Democrats in this hypothetical matchup. If you guys did enjoy this video looking at some 2026 generic ballot polling, please go ahead and hit the like button, subscribe for more content just like this, and I will see you guys in the next video.